Today we're gonna talk about something particularly interesting but also slightly complicated. To make this video, I read countless scientific articles, watched tons of videos on science YouTube channels like Veritasium, and even joined the physics and quantum mechanics forum to ask experts directly. Of course, as always, this is a theory video. I will use information available in the game, but my theories and conclusions are not to be considered the official lore of the game, unless I got something right and it's confirmed in a later update of the game itself. This video contains a lot of scientific concepts, which may sound like it's gonna be a heavy and complicated video to keep up with, but I'll explain everything in the easiest and lightest possible way. So hopefully this video won't feel like a university lecture, which is the reason why it took me 2 weeks to write the script. Well then, put your lab coats on and let's start with the main topic of the entire video. What is entropy? Most of those who have a generic idea will reply that it's disorder, but that answer is actually mostly wrong. The easiest example is a glass full of ice cubes. Despite it being disordered, that glass has low entropy, but when the ice cubes will have completely melted and reached room temperature, that same glass will have high entropy. That's because entropy measures how likely a system, in this case water, is to be in a state rather than another. Water isn't usually solid, so ice has low entropy, while it's more likely to be liquid, so high entropy. This tendency to warm up and spread, so to go toward high entropy and reach thermal equilibrium, is shared by everything in the universe, even by the universe itself. Entropy, in short, is all about probability. Statistically, water could suddenly turn into ice out of nowhere, but the chances are so low that it simply never happens. It will always try to get as warm as the environment around it. As you might have guessed, entropy is a physical property of thermodynamics, and it's fully explained by its second law. Entropy never spontaneously decreases, and two or more systems, like ice cubes in a glass in a room, will always reach thermal equilibrium, so they'll end up having the same temperature, while the opposite can never happen. Thermal equilibrium, which will come back in the video later, is important because it prevents any work, any process from happening. If you leave ice in a glass, it will melt because there's a difference in temperature, but if you leave a glass full of room temperature water, nothing will ever happen spontaneously. This also means that going from low to high entropy is necessary for things to happen, whether it's just ice cubes melting or life itself. We start from a tiny concentrated cell full of energy, low entropy, and we grow until our bodies can't perform any process anymore and die, high entropy. As Firefly would say,
life begets death.
Another example that will come back later in the video is the sun, because it also follows the same process. It burns its fuel and produces heat, but when the fuel runs out, the sun will inevitably cool down to match the temperature of the universe. When it comes to Starail, Firefly told us that she has entropy loss syndrome, an intentional result of the genetic modifications made to the iron cavalry of Glamoth. These artificial humans had been created only to fight, they weren't supposed to have a normal life or even survive in general. The entropy loss syndrome was basically a failsafe to prevent them from desiring to live and rebelling against Glamoth. As long as they fought, they would have been fine because their suit stops the symptoms of this sickness, while if they rebelled and tried to act like humans, the sickness would have disposed of them. Firefly specifically defined the syndrome as something eroding her, until reality and dream would merge and her physical existence would simply cease to exist. So, what's entropy loss syndrome? Loss can be intended in two ways. Either her entropy is decreasing, but having the soldiers go Benjamin Button doesn't really feel like a fast way to stop a rebellion, or it could mean that she's being stripped of her entropy. She's slowly losing her possibilities to exist. In easier terms, whether water is solid or liquid, it's still water. But with the syndrome, it would slowly lose its possibilities to exist as water, until there's nothing left. Firefly is stuck in that moment. She is not reverting back to a cell, nor she is growing old. Her whole existence is being entirely destroyed. It's no coincidence that she is on the path of the destruction, you know? Going back to science, what contains the biggest amounts of entropy in the universe are black holes. They are easily the least understandable space objects we know so far, and sometimes they seem to defy the laws of physics, mainly because, again, we still don't fully understand them. What we know about black holes is that whatever falls into them, or more specifically whatever touches the so-called event horizon, is literally doomed. The gravitational pull is so strong that the escape velocity, the speed required to get out of it, is faster than the speed of light, which is the fastest speed known in the universe, hence the well-known statement "not even light can escape," which is also the reason why they're black. But what happens to the object that fell inside? The most accurate answer would be that we have no idea. There are tons of theories that try to explain it, but they all fall short one way or another. One of these theories comes from quantum mechanics, according to which every process has to be reversible. Everything contains information, and information cannot be destroyed. It must always be available in order to tell us what the original object was and what its possible futures are. Essentially, if you burn the book, quantum mechanics, in theory, can use the ashes to figure out that it was a book and even what was written on its pages. Now, without going too deep into unitarity, time reversal symmetry, and conservation of information, which would require a degree in quantum physics that I definitely don't have, the problem is that we should be able to retrieve the information about an object that fell into a black hole, but nothing can escape it, so that information seems completely lost. To make it worse, Stephen Hawking discovered that black holes emit a very faint thermal radiation, called Hawking radiation, that not only doesn't carry information, because it's just heat, but it also makes black hole evaporate over an absurd amount of time. Put 67 zeros after a 1, which is called 10 ambigentillion it seems, and those are the years it takes a black hole to evaporate. Now, if a black hole completely evaporates and nothing is left of it in the end, what happened to that information that can never be destroyed? This massive problem is called the black hole information paradox. Now, going back to Stariel, we do know of one extremely massive but also sentient black hole, IX the Nihility. They have been defined as the sleeping and shapeless who never glances at humanity because they couldn't care less. Everything that is absorbed by IX turns either into stagnant water or into their mindless puppets. Acheron, the only emanator of the Nihility, is the best example when it comes to what we've just talked about black holes, because she is a self-annihilator and she's slowly losing memories. Memories are basically information, so Acheron may have been written based on the black hole information paradox, with the only difference being that in Stariel we know what happens inside the black hole, inside IX the Nihility. So let's try to understand this eon better, because we might discover a major truth about this universe by doing so. Losing oneself is a reality every self-annihilator must face, reason why Acheron lost most of her ability to taste food, she can only see black, white and red, but above all, she forgets things pretty easily, which she defines as her memories disappearing into an unseen realm. We learn that she guards the Acheron, the river between the horizon of existence and the innermost part of the Nihility, and she guides out of the Nihility those souls that resist complete annihilation. Acheron's goal is to reach device IX, whatever it is, in the deepest part of the Nihility in order to put an end to IX itself. This deepest part of the Nihility may be the unseen realm her memories are disappearing into, and who knows, if she accomplishes her goal, she might even get back everything she lost. To go a little deeper into what IX the Nihility really is, Tiernan told us one more interesting thing. He said that the opposite of sheeped harmony is IX the Nihility, but if we think about it, they are actually very similar. Apart from the fact that they don't actually fight each other, but rather they coexist, joining either the harmony or the nihility causes a very similar kind of unity, with the only difference being the way this unity is formed. Xipe gazes upon humanity and embraces it with peace and love, making everybody feel like they're part of a huge family, in which they actually lose individuality in favor of pure harmony. Similarly, those who join or end up inside IX either turn into stagnant water or become their puppets. They also lose individuality, but the biggest difference is that IX doesn't gaze upon humanity because they don't need to. Humanity will always, inevitably, become part of the Nihility. Tiernan told Acheron that IX left woven strands of fate for humans to walk, and together IX weaves a great shadow that silently envelops the humans. This means that IX is not just a black hole, but the darkness or void of the universe itself, and when people die, not just past striders or those who accidentally fall inside, they all end up inside the Nihility, where they can either be absorbed and annihilated or cross to the other side. This sounds a lot like Xipe and IX are two sides of the same coin, two eons that came to life together, most likely created by Enna the Order, the one who created the universe. Xipe and IX simply represent life and death, so the reason why the Nihility is not 9th or 9 but IX is probably because those are the first two letters of the name Xipe, but flipped just like a coin. The real difference between Xipe and IX then is their real goal for humanity. Xipe embraces them, never to let them go, because she wants them to stay in the universe, while IX offers them a way out. But out of what? Well, if you think about it, Enna the Order created a bubble universe that feels like a massive dreamscape that was originally carefully controlled by Enna themselves, which is basically what Sunday was trying to recreate in Penacony by turning the planet into a sort of micro-universe or microcosm that he would have directed from the outside, from his reality. This means that the souls Acheron guides out of the Nihility are actually being led outside the bubble universe itself, which also explains why death is the way to the waking world. This could also mean that the horizon of existence we saw is not actually a black hole, but probably the borders of the universe itself. One question remains though. If IX never gazes on humanity, why did they make Acheron their emanator? Well, my hypothesis is very simple. Without an emanator, the souls wouldn't be able to choose salvation instead of annihilation, but above all, let's remember that IX is also sleeping like probably everybody else in this universe. Could it be that IX wants Acheron to eventually dispose of them so that they too can get out of the dream and reach the waking world? Now let's go back to our universe, because you might have noticed that some scientific concepts and terms are represented in star rail through the eons themselves. We can logically deduce the history of our universe because of how entropy works. Because entropy always increases, it must mean that at its beginning the universe had very low entropy. This is called the past hypothesis, and like I said, it's basically just a logical deduction. For the universe to have such low entropy, everything must have been in the least likely state possible, so everything that composes our current universe, and do remember that what we see is just the observable universe, so just a small section of it, must have been compacted by absurd amounts of gravity in a teeny tiny highly ordered spot. Then, with the Big Bang, everything started spreading out, which still is to this day. Chaos ensued and everything was created. This one-way road toward high entropy is called the arrow of time, and at the end of it there's thermal equilibrium, also known as the heat death of the universe. In Star Rail we can easily find these concepts by observing the eons. Enna the Order created the universe and made it so strict that it was completely impossible to keep it that way. She was also the first Eon to die, absorbed by the representation of the stars and galaxies, Xipe, who gave humanity freedom to do whatever they wanted. We could also say that IX was born at the same time, and just like galaxies need a supermassive black hole, so Harmony needs Nihility. The Arrow of Time could be Lan the Hunt, the Luck's Arrow, since they are fighting against Yaoshe the Abundance, an Eon who prevents entropy by granting people immortality. We also already know that the universe is doomed to end, and guess what? Among the eons there is Who the Equilibrium, which is one of the oldest eons of the universe, a being that wants to split and merge everything into an equilibrial whole, an eon whose duties suddenly grew greater as soon as Enna died. Now I'd like to talk about Terminus the Finality like in my previous tutorial video, because what we've talked about so far applies to this eon as well. We know that Terminus is traveling back in time from the end of the universe to its beginning, and they are murmuring prophecies of the future, or actually their past, in reverse in their sleep. From the point of view of a person who follows the era of time, Terminus is omnipresent. Their prophecies can always be heard because they have probably already completed their journey, since we know that they brushed past Enna the Order, so they exist in every single moment of the present. In my last video, I proposed the idea that Terminus may be the accumulation of all the eons after they met their own moment of finality, both because Elegy told us that Terminus is born at the end of time and they're traveling to its beginning to start a new cycle toward a new finality, and because in the Swarm Disaster Simulator universe, the secret called Sand King Tesseronth Part 1 says that, according to the finality's words, Tesseronth's death predetermines their birth, that is, Terminus's birth. You might be asking why I'm bringing Terminus up again, and the answer is simple. Everything we talked about today reveals two important truths about the universe: which eon will die for last, finally causing Terminus's birth, and what the finality actually means. The first one is very easy. I believe that after IX the Nihility will evaporate or be reduced to ashes, as Elegy said, Who the Equilibrium will be the last eon standing. He will represent maximum entropy, but also the end of the universe, because there won't be anything else that could spontaneously happen. At that point, Who will probably cease to exist as well, turning into the last missing piece that will bring Terminus to life in order to reboot the entire universe. The second concept is actually also pretty easy, especially after everything we've discussed so far. If Terminus is the only being capable of traveling against the arrow of time, so from maximum entropy, Who the Equilibrium, to minimal entropy, Enna the Order, then Terminus is simply Star Rail's version of anti-entropy, a name those of you who played Honkai Impact 3rd perfectly know. This also perfectly falls in line with what Jade told Firefly in version 2.3. Just as she follows and uses the powers granted by Qlipoth the Preservation to destroy people's lives for fun, so the exact opposite of what Qlipoth strives for, so is Firefly trying to cure her entropy loss syndrome, meaning that she wants to be able to increase her own entropy just like anybody else. She wants to move with the era of time, which is the exact opposite of what Terminus, being anti-entropy, does. Now, in this last chapter of the video, I will propose my speculations about the future of the universe. In Honkai Impact, Negentropy is an organization that wants to defeat the Honkai to save humanity using mechs instead of the Valkyries. For some reason, this reminds me that Enna the Order is a mechanical puppet, with a mysterious eye staring at her that looks awfully similar to the symbol of the House Apocalypse, so Shixel, which means destiny, but that's beside the point. Could it be that Terminus is part of Enna's order? We were told that Enna and Qlipoth made a deal during the Swarm Disaster to preserve the order of the universe, which required Qlipoth to defeat Tesseronth. But Enna didn't fulfill their side of the deal because they were absorbed by Xipe, but what if that's wrong? What if Terminus is Enna and Qlipoth's joint creation for the preservation of order? Terminus was tasked with the reconstruction of the universe, probably a better one without those eons like Tesseronth, Ouroboros, and even Aha, whose paths disrupt the order. This means that Terminus may be the accumulation of only some specific eons, whose main characteristics became part of who Terminus is. The eons may be Terminus's eidolons, so mirror pieces just like Drilla. They are traveling the universe through time like Akivili did through space, they come back to life like the reincarnation Long the Permanence created, they are sleeping and shapeless like IX, and they will destroy the universe to create a new one, like Nanook's kind of destruction. Though the major question is still the same. What is Terminus trying to do with the Trailblazer, a being transformed by the Phenolidae themselves, who is also gathering the powers of the Aeons? And that's it, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Star Rail or Genshin Impact Theory videos, consider subscribing. This video was really hard to make, I rewrote the script at least 6 times, so I hope it wasn't heavy or boring. Anyway, I'll see you with the analysis of Genshin Impact's summer event very soon, so thank you so much for watching, and until next time, over and out.